We are recording the webinar, and welcome Aldo, Angela, Baz, David, Graham. Thank you for all coming in. I think Claire and I can hear each other. I hope you can hear us. If we can have a comment in the chat just to say that everybody could hear, that would be good, because we've been having a couple of technical issues there. I see something popping up in the Q&A. Yes, we can all hear you. Good afternoon. Right, okay. So fantastic. Welcome to this webinar hosted by the IIM. My name is Bruce Rayner. I'm an interim of more years than I can remember doing it. Also on the call, we have Tony Evans, who is the chair of the IIM. Welcome, Tony. And as I say, we're with bated breath and some anticipation, and some dread because I'm keen to hear where I've been going wrong for all these years, but anticipation because hopefully Claire's going to help me put it right. So this is a topic that's very dear to everybody's heart, I'm sure. And it's about how you get the maximum bang for your buck with your CV and your LinkedIn profile. So Claire, you have got some slides.
Yes.
You can share the screen, or if you want me to drive it, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, you can
as well.
drive it if you've got them there.
Okay, so why don't you introduce yourself, introduce the topic. I'll get the slides teed up, and we'll get started.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Bruce. So hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. I'm Claire. I am a partner at Anderson Quigley. We're a search, interim and advisory firm who focus on supporting organisations with a social purpose. I've worked in recruitment for a long time, nearly about 20 years, which means I've seen quite a lot of CVs, good ones and bad ones. I've also spent quite a lot of time on LinkedIn, either looking for talent or helping candidates improve their profiles and get noticed on the platform. So as Bruce said, in this webinar, I want to talk about creating a CV that really does get attention, or at least a telephone call back from people like me and also employers. And also common mistakes to avoid. So I'm going to structure the webinar around common mistakes to avoid and how to create a value proposition that really does stand out. And then in the second part, I'm going to share some top tips on creating a LinkedIn profile that really does work the algorithm and hopefully will increase your engagement. So, Bruce, how are you getting on with the slides?
I'm just about to open it. I've got it here. I can see it. So just give us a second. I will get into presentation view, hopefully. I'll share the screen and we'll be good. Hang on a second, guys. Just
and if there are questions throughout, please do just type them in the Q&A, and I'll do my best to answer them as we go forward, or we can do some Q&As at the end, whichever's easiest.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Please drop your questions in the Q&A as we go, and we'll try and answer them as we go. Hopefully, Claire, can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay, let me just get back to the. There we are.
Perfect.
So, all good.
Perfect. Okay, so let's go to the first slide, the next slide, and I'll just tell you to click as we go along, if that's all right, Bruce, and then we'll get there. So your CV is your shop window. So this is the first thing that employers will see, and with your LinkedIn profile as well. So I've seen quite a few of CVs in my time, some particularly awful and others that make me go, wow, I really, really, really want to speak to that candidate. So I also know what clients like. I know what makes easy reading. I can tell an average candidate from an outstanding one just by looking at their CV for a few seconds. So I hope my tips will help you spring clean your CV. And for this session, I really want you to, back to the next slide, Bruce. Think of your CV as in the previous slide, the one we're already on. Sorry, yeah. As a mountain. So I want you to think of your CV as a mountain without a summit, okay? It's something that will never be conquered, and you should always be tweaking it, especially when applying for new assignments. And my first tip is to get organized. And this might sound really obvious, but in the world of interim, you need to be ahead of the game. So you need to have a folder where you keep all of your CVs and all of the different versions that you'll develop as your career develops. You always should have a master. This may appear long and more detailed, but it really is the one for you to focus on to build your other CVs. Oh, sorry, Bruce, I'll tell you when to click if that's all right.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to get the chat.
I should have probably controlled it myself because you can't read my mind.
No, don't worry. Hang on. Right. Okay, there we are.
But yeah, so just click it once more, Bruce, and then hold fire for me for a second. So yeah, my main part, so for us to get started with your CV, you need to have a master and then use that to build out your different CVs. This way you will stay massively ahead of the game, because people like me will often call our candidates and request a CV for a particular assignment because the client wants to see candidates within 24 hours. So if you're ahead of the game, that will be much beneficial for you in the future. So before we click onto the next slide, I just want to mention a little bit about building mini case studies. As your journey develops as an interim manager, my advice would be to create mini case studies for the different assignments that you've done. These don't need to be long. In fact, the shorter the better, clear and concise, fitting on one page. And the simple format to follow, which you probably know about, is STAR model. That's my favorite tip for this webinar, because it really does help you keep your language in a really concise manner. So what was your situation? What was the task at hand? And what was your action? And what were the results? And lastly, I often get asked how long a CV should be. And I don't think we need to stick to the old two-fashioned page rule, especially for interim. By the very nature of what you do, you're going to have a lot more to say on your CV. So please don't worry about the length of your CV. You'll always be changing it. If it's relevant, then it needs to be in there. Right, click. And then you may as well click again and then hold off until I tell you to again. Fantastic. So now that you've got yourself organized and you're starting to create different versions of your CV and your profile, it's worth checking in on a couple of common mistakes to avoid. So it may seem obvious, but the amount of CVs that I see that miss off the results and the impact is quite alarming, actually. This is the really good stuff. So it's the stuff that will help you get noticed. It will help you stand out. And you really need to shout about it, because it's all of the great work that you've done. So avoid writing your CV like a list of job descriptions and responsibilities. There's literally no impact into that. I would advise you to use quantifiable metrics. So wherever possible, try and use numbers to demonstrate your achievements, okay? So for example, instead of writing something like improved sales, write increased sales by 20% within a 6-month period through the implementation of a new sales strategy. So that is going to have more impact than just improved sales, because it tells your reader how you did it and how much you did it by. You definitely also need to think about key accomplishments that you've achieved in each role, and make sure that these are written in a similar format. So successfully manage the integration of 2 companies, resulting in a streamlined operation and increased efficiency, could be a way to write it. The third part in this section is about really emphasizing the challenges that you faced. Because as an interim manager, it's likely that you've come into that business to solve a particular problem or challenge. And it's one of the key things that client will look to understand from your CV. So if you've clearly communicated that, the client is much in a better position to be able to understand who you are and what you do. So for example, led the turnaround of a struggling division, achieving profitability within a 12-month period through cost cutting and process improvements. Click. And again, so this is where your folder on your laptop comes into play. So not tailoring your CV is a common mistake to avoid. So this is really important when you're looking for your next assignment, especially if you're an interim with lots of assignments under your belt. Each one will have its own merits, so it's really important to pull out the most relevant skills and experience from each. It can be tough task, but it will really communicate to the client that you understand the challenge that they face and you're the right person to take on that job. And with your master CV, you can then tailor each one from there, keeping in only what's relevant. And at this point in time as well, this is when you could translate your key assignments into those mini case studies, ready to showcase when you're ready for the next assignment. And you can write those mini case studies in the star format. Okay, next slide, please. And one more click, perfect. So, closely related to the above, this is also quite an important point to consider, and due to the nature of interim work, your CV is likely to be quite lengthy. So depending on how many assignments you've had, including every single one in date order could be quite long. So I would advise that you would create a section at the top of your CV which covers the most relevant roles, again tailoring to each assignment. You could list them out, list your core achievements, and then if this is the first thing the reader sees, they can then move on to read the rest of your CV if they choose. I think it's also important to point out here is that you don't need to go into detail in every single assignment. You could just do organisation, job title and date is absolutely fine for things that maybe are a little bit further back in your career. And some interims will work on assignments at the same time. So another reason that it sometimes can be quite difficult to list everything in date order. And in my experience, clients and recruiters are more interested in what happened in the last 5 years. So make that your focus. And an assignment that you did 15 years ago, it might not be that impactful now, even though still important. It might just be the fact that you just keep it short. Okay, and then mistake number 4 is an interesting one, actually. It's about not being entirely honest. So click to the next slide for me, Bruce, and then one more. So think about this carefully, because you know, CV embellishment is something that is quite rife in the recruitment sector, and until you start drilling down into what's written on the CV, that's when you find out. So really think about what you did. Did you really lead that project, or were you just part of the team? Did you set up the change program, or was it already there when you arrived? Think about what actually you achieved. Most clients in my experience are still using competency-based interview questions to really identify what it was that you delivered. And as a recruiter, I do the same. So when I see a statement on a CV and I'm chatting to that candidate, I do want to dig in to really find out what impact that they had made and what they had done. So just be careful what it is you write in your CV. and make sure that you are backing it all up with your statistics and results. Okay, last common mistake to avoid is overloading the CV with information. So I think it's really important to keep in mind who will be reading your CV, know your audience. Keep your language simple and use paragraphs and bullet points to make your CV easy reading. That might sound really obvious, but there are quite a few CVs that I have seen that really try and storytell and have real big chunks of text, and it's quite difficult to read. You'll know that from you know, receiving lots of different emails and things. So for an interim position, when your CV is put forward, it will likely be a time-poor executive who will want to scan through your CV and see if you're right for the job. And there's also been some research that recruiters spend between 6 and 8 seconds job. So that's a really short time window to look at your CV and go, right, shall we call this person? So a clear and concise CV is your best option to ensure that the reader sees the value you would bring to the role without getting bogged down in all the unnecessary detail. So again, I often advise candidates to follow that simple formula, which is first focus on the role. What did you come in to do? What was the situation? Make this sharp and to the point, and then focus on your achievements, bullet point them. And honestly, that is by far the easiest and most digestible way to break down the role into individual achievements. So I hope everyone's still with me. I'm going to move on to profiles now. And arguably, this is probably one of the most important parts of your CV. And I want you to think of your profile as the back of a book. And if you could click once, Bruce, that would be great. So before you buy a book, most people usually turn it over and look at the summary. And that summary is really designed to excite you. It's written to inform you about what the book is about and to get the reader to keep reading so that then you finally make a purchase. So in other words, exactly like a hiring manager or a recruiter is looking at your CV. If your profile, for example, says something like a dedicated and motivated managing director with a proven track record of success in delivering results, I'm probably switching off because that's quite bland and everyone has that profile. But if I have one that says something like an interim managing director who enables CEOs and shareholders to experience financial stability, retailer confidence, and double-digit growth, I'm starting to pay attention. So do you see how those two are different? And in this profile, you're really telling the reader what they will experience by hiring you. So the more emotional words you can put into this profile, the better. And then in the rest of the profile, which is probably only about 300 words or so, you need to name drop as well. Name drop the clients that you have worked for. And this is known as social proof. And again, can be very powerful. The other part to profiles is around keywords. So you should always try and weave keywords into the narrative, because this is a way that search engines, even within recruitment businesses, our CRMs will pick up keywords if we're searching for the candidates that we want to speak to. And then underneath your profile, this is one of my favorite bits, is to make a list of 4 career highlights and the outcomes. And these will act as your greatest hits. So onto the main body. Brilliant, thanks, Bruce. So hopefully this is all making sense. And some of this is really obvious, but actually sometimes it's really quite nice to just talk it through and have a little bit of a reminder about the best practice for CV writing. So for me, I always work in reverse order. So that means your newest assignment at the top, And I find it very helpful if the person writing their CV starts off with a short description of the company. Depending on which sector you work in, other sectors may not know that company, its size and what it does. So for example, the University of Arts London, a client that I am working with at the moment, they are a world-class university shaping the creative industries worldwide. The University of Arts offers an extensive range of courses in art and design, and with over 8,000 students, UAL is ranked second in the world for art and design. So that short statement just gives the reader an idea about the size of the university and the rankings, which is really important. And then you would have your job title. So for example, transformation director, and then you would showcase what you have achieved. And again, I would follow the STAR model. So this for me is such a simple rule, but it does really help you keep your language concise and tell the reader exactly what you did. And the reader can relate to you as well. They might read it and think, gosh, I actually have that same problem and I really need this individual to solve it for me. So don't forget to describe your situation or the challenge that you faced, what you were tasked with, what action you took, and what the results were. And you might not follow every step in all of your assignments, but it does give you a nice framework to work on. So don't forget to detail your outcomes. I've definitely said this before, but it's really important to note down your outcomes. I recently had a client actually that rejected a perfectly good candidate because he said to me that her CV read like a job description. And that was really unfortunate because she was really great for the role, but the way that she had set out her CV was very much like a job description. So one more clip for me, Bruce.
So just before we do that, Claire, can we pick up on a couple of questions before we lose them?
Yes, definitely.
So David has asked, thanks for the question, David, about the 8 seconds. A bit of clarification on that. Are you talking there about if we respond to an advert? Not sure quite what David meant by that, but maybe you can just clarify what the 8-second thing is.
Yeah, sure. I think I know what David means. So yes, I think when we have an advert and we have loads of applications for an advert, and this is mainly for interim, I'm talking about permanent, the permanent world might be different. So we will receive a huge response to adverts, and literally I've got the role in mind. I know what my client is looking for, and we will open up the CV and scan it quite quickly to pick out the key things that we want. And we'll probably make our decision within that 8 seconds about whether to put that person through on a long list to call or not. So that's when tailoring your CV for different assignments is really important, because you might be very, very good for that role, but from the CV that I saw, it didn't jump out to me that you had the experience or the skills that was required. So I hope that answers your question, David.
And then Mark, hi Mark Walsh. Mark has asked, where in your CV would you have your profile?
Oh, good question. So if you do one click for me, Bruce, this is what I was going to show next, and this will answer your question. So
yeah.
So I mean, this is all again down to personal taste, but in my view, this is how I would set out your CV. So you would obviously need your contact details, and actually these can go at the top or the bottom. Doesn't really matter. You would then have your awesome profile. So for me, your profile is probably the first thing that the reader will see. So they'll see Claire Carter and then my great profile, which is my value proposition about what I do. Then it would be your greatest hits. So, you know, your 3 or 4 greatest achievements. Then your main body, which is all of your different assignments. Then your academic achievements, but really the only relevant ones. So You don't need to put in your 11 plus, your scout badge, or your cycling proficiency, just your main key achievements academically. And then most of my interims do voluntary or pro bono work. I think that's a really important part of the CV as well. And then your last words, which will basically be a couple of sentences that bring your personality to paper. So that would be the format that I would follow, Mark. So hopefully that answers your question.
And then Tony has asked, for interim roles, often the initial information is scant. You know, they can't divulge who the client is, and you know, at the initial contact. I mean, I just had one the other day of that nature. Can't tell you very much about it. You know, it's all hush hush. So if you're being asked to submit a CV under those conditions, how do you establish what is relevant detail at that point, other than a crystal ball, which is probably what none of us have?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I think, well, I don't know if many recruiters would work in that way, because if I'm talking to a candidate about a role, I would want to tell them as much as I can about it so they can tailor their CV for that role. Because, as you say, without knowing about the assignment and what the client's looking to deliver, how can you tailor your CV? So that sounds a bit odd for me if I've understood the question correctly.
Well, I was going to ask you, I mean, just my own self-interested question here, Claire, if I'm permitted, is that in sort of, you know, a lot of occasions, and maybe I'm just peculiar for the length of time I've been doing this, the preferred model for me is that recruiters who know me will call me up and say, we've got one here, we think that you'd be interested in this. And they do that because they know me, not just because I've lobbed a CV in. Now, what we then get into a conversation on is, if they need a CV, they'll either help me tailor it, or they will critique it before it goes over. But I suppose the point of the question is that if you've got a trusted candidate base that you're going to because you think they're right for the CV, to what extent does it go on your personal recommendation as opposed to what is written on the page? Because clearly, if there's a discontinuity between those two things, then, you know, everybody looks a bit dumb. You know, I'm telling you this guy's great, but the CV doesn't back that up. Doesn't seem to be a situation you'd want to be in as a recruiter.
Yeah, and I think that's when, as an interim manager, your relationship with your service provider is really important. Because yes, I've got in my head, I've got a database of people that over the years I've worked with, I know, I've placed before, they've done a great job for me, I'll place them again. So automatically, when I am working on a vacancy, the first thing I do is think about the people I know. And then I'll exhaust that list, and then I will start finding new candidates or looking at people that are responding to an advert. So I think in parallel to having a good CV, as an interim manager, you also need to be building relationship with the right service providers. And we actually talk about that, don't we, Bruce, in a different webinar that we offer. But you know, there are many great service providers out there. We all do different things, we all focus on different sectors, we all focus on different functions. So you need to do a bit of research, pick a provider that works in your area of expertise and build a relationship with them, because that is also going to then help you and your CV stand out.
And I suppose that's the point of this session, isn't it? Because as an interim, you're either trying to catch the attention of a potential recruiter that you don't know, you're trying to update the recruiters you do know as you're building a body of assignments, and how do you put that together and build those in and develop your CV, because it's obviously a living, breathing, organic document as you're building your body of work.
Yeah.
And then the third one is probably the situation that David was envisaging, where you've posted or somebody's posted a job ad somewhere, and you've responded to that either to a recruiter that you've known or to a recruiter that is unknown to you. So you've got to do all this kind of networking, and these, whether it's the CV or the LinkedIn profile or any other collateral you have, your website or whatever it is, that's all got to be working for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is all of these things intertwined. So your CV is one thing, you know, your LinkedIn profile is another thing, which is what we'll talk about next. And then your relationship with the service providers, it is another thing. And then on top of that, you've got your own wider network and how you build relationships with other people outside of service providers. So it's all of these things that will help you get your name in front of the right people to land those exciting assignments.
Okay, so any more questions on the CV part, please put them in the Q&A. I keep them coming, and we'll move on, Claire.
Yeah, okay, cool. So before we move on to LinkedIn, there's a couple of homework tasks for people. So based on what we've just talked about, what I'd quite like everyone to do as a little exercise is to look at your CV, take one of your positions and rewrite it using the steps that we've talked about. So the STAR model, which I did see a question in the Q&A, it stands for situation, task, action, and results. So situation, task, action, and results. So if you take one of your recent assignments, remodel the CV in that format and just see how it changes. And then the second task is to look at your most recent 3 or 4 assignments and write out 2 or 3 results or how you impacted the client. And then you're now starting to kind of build your CV in a slightly different way. That's your homework. So that's it on the CV front, but yeah, please keep the questions coming, and if there are any more at the end, I'm happy to answer them. And also I'm really happy to, you know, do a quick review of anyone's CV. So if you want to pop me over your CV.
No, you've opened the floodgates.
I've given myself quite a big job, haven't I?
Yeah. Well, yeah, good luck with that, Claire. But thank you for the offer. That's fantastic.
Well,
I was hoping
there's not. We haven't got thousands of people on the webinar, so I think it's a comfortable number that I could help. So anyway. Right.
So so listen, just before we move on, we've got to see a question from Baz there. Thanks, Baz. How useful is it to use adjectives like led, delivered, improved, enhanced alongside quantitative measures? And how many bullet points of achievements per role is considered appropriate? Okay. I think I know how you're going to answer that, but over to you, Claire.
Yeah, I think those words are great because yeah, they do give the reader an idea of what you have achieved. And I think that the number of bullet points per assignment is going to depend on how complex it was. So your assignment might have been 2 or 3 months long compared to another assignment that might have been 12 months long. So it is all relative, but I would say for something that was quite meaty and it was like a 9-month contract, I would expect to see maybe 6 or 7 bullet points. If it was a shorter term assignment where perhaps there was a particular focus, maybe 3 or 4 bullet points. So there's probably not one rule about that. It's probably dependent on the type of assignment that you had. So I hope that's helpful. Cool. Okay. So let's move on to the next slide then. And if everyone's still with me, I hope I'm not talking too fast because I feel like I've got quite a lot to go through. So I hope I'm not talking at speed. But next we want to talk about LinkedIn. So why is LinkedIn important? Well, it's your digital shop window. And this is the most beautiful window that I could find. And if all of our profiles led to this destination, we'd all be very happy, I'm sure. But whatever you want to do with LinkedIn, whether you want to gain more followers, have more interactions, or get noticed for inspiring posts, your LinkedIn profile also needs to be current and continually updated. And in actual fact, I would say that your CV and your LinkedIn profile need to be quite closely aligned, because the first thing that an employer will do most likely, and also a recruiter like me, is probably look you up on LinkedIn once they've seen your CV. And if it's all singing, all dancing, and you're really active in the market, it's probably going to make people want to speak to you. So there's so much of LinkedIn that I'm still learning about. It's got so many different capabilities, but I'm going to try and take you through a few of the basic parts of LinkedIn so that we can build a really attractive profile. So Bruce, if you can click to the next slide for me. Now, I've got arrows here, Bruce, so it might be quite difficult for us, but I'll just tell you to click once and then an arrow will appear, so it will indicate what I'm talking about. So first up, this is the main page, and this will look familiar to probably all of us on the call. It's the top part of your LinkedIn. And I'm going to talk through some of the areas here that will hopefully position you as a brilliant interim manager, but also work the algorithm. So first of all, if you press the click, I want you to look at your headline. So this is what comes just under your name. So if you're looking to attract the right attention to your profile, the headline field is really the key part where you would tell the world what you do. And you have 100 characters to play with here. So this does say insert your job title, but actually I find it much better if we use a bit more of an exciting sentence to tell people what you do. So my job title is partner, but if I had that there, it wouldn't really tell you an awful lot about what I do, but I think my headline does. So if you also include keywords in your headline, this will also help with the algorithm. So I could make my headline a bit better by putting the word interim in there. So it would read, connecting the higher education market with flexible interim talent that helps deliver sustainable change. So the keywords in there are interim, higher education, and sustainable change. So have a think about what you do and see if you can come up with a statement where you can weave in keywords that tells your reader what you do. So if you could click twice, Bruce, directly under your location, that's it, next pink arrow. So directly under the location is a space where you can add a website. I work for Anderson Quigley, so I have got our company website there. And the reason I've got it there is because I would want traffic to be driven to our Anderson Quigley website. So for me, that works really well, but don't panic if you don't have a website. So if you're an interim manager, some of my interim managers have their own websites that basically give a bit of an overview about who they are and what they do. If you have, definitely add it here. If you don't worry, you could add any other relevant link, such as even the website of the current company that you're working with. Okay, a double click, Bruce.
1, 2.
That's it. Moving on to this button here. So this is really interesting, and you can do a number of different things here. You can indicate that you're hiring, and you can indicate that you're looking for work. So if you press that button, you'll then get the option to say, I'm looking for work, and a nice banner will appear on your photo. You may have seen that on other people's profiles, but it might just make employers take a second look. And it certainly makes me take a second look of candidates that are open to me contacting them about new jobs. But the other thing that I really like in this area, so when you press the Open To button, is you can add your services. So when you click it, you can choose to add your services, and it basically tells LinkedIn the services that you provide. So for example, I have chosen management consulting, interview preparation, CV writing and CV reviewing, and team building. It then gives you about 500 characters to write about these services that you offer. And you can also add in your pricing here as well. If you click to the next slide, Bruce. Oh, one more. There we go. Yeah, that's it. So once you've done that, this blue box will appear here, and it basically will tell you the services that you provide. So you can see mine there. And then if you click show details, that will take you through to another page that you can put loads more information in. You can put case studies, you can put examples of your work, you can put your pricing, and then prospective clients can actually request pricing or a proposal from you by clicking that button. So that's actually quite an interesting bit to make sure that you've got on your profile. I hope I'm not going too fast. So if you click the button for me again, Bruce.
So Claire, don't worry, because we are recording this, so people will be able to replay it if
Perfect.
I've handled the technology correctly.
Great. Yeah, and just one more click for me. So this is your main profile building section. So most of you will probably be familiar with this part, but here you will basically be able to add loads of different components to your LinkedIn profile. And actually, the more information that you have on your profile, the more complete LinkedIn will feel, and therefore it will absolutely affect the algorithm in a positive way. So here you can add in recommended sections, core sections, and then any additional sections. So have a play around with it, click that button, see what comes up, and if you've got something to say, definitely add it in.
So Claire, just a question that was going through my mind, which Tony has asked. So Anderson Quigley, I'm guessing you're using a version of LinkedIn for Anderson Quigley. Is all the LinkedIn functionality available on the free accounts? Because obviously there's, I mean, not that I'm a great expert on the different functionality on LinkedIn, but I do know that if you pay more money, you get more stuff.
Yeah, that's it. That's a good question. So I guess the difference for someone like me, so we have something that's called a recruiter license, and that is really for recruiters. So it enables me to search in a highly more complex way than it does somebody that just has a standard use. But you should be able to do all of these things if you have a basic function. It's just the recruiter license that I have that's different.
Yeah, because obviously the free accounts are the ones, that's the, you are the product that they are selling to recruiters. So Tony, everything that I mean, my guess is that everything that a recruiter needs to see is free because they're paying to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's us that pay the money rather than the candidates that have the profiles, for sure. I think that's who LinkedIn would target to make their money.
Yeah, and of course you can answer my well, a question that we've been having within the IIM actually, Claire. Maybe you can quickly answer this for us. Is that if I type in interim anything, interim CEO, interim HR director, I get tens of thousands of responses from LinkedIn, but I'm not sure there are that many people that are active in the interim market. Have you come across this? So how do you separate kind of people that have got or profiles that have got interim in their CV somewhere that get delivered in a sort of a top line search from actually the 200 or 300 that are actually the executive interims that you want to talk to for C-suite positions? Yeah,
that's a good question, because that's totally dependent on how an individual writes their profile. So if, for example, an individual has used the job title interim managing director, you'll know that they're an interim, but an interim managing director might just call themselves a managing director. So it really does depend how that individual has written their profile. You can search on keywords, but until you actually speak to that person, you won't know if they're an interim unless they have clearly stated that on their profile somewhere.
Yeah. All right, thank you. So moving on, we've got about 15 minutes, 10-15 minutes left, Claire.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the creator mode next. So if you click once, Bruce, I should be able to go to the next slide. Excellent. So you've got, and I hope this is for everyone that's got a free account. It's just made me think now if it is there for everybody, but if it isn't, then I'll come back to you on that. But this is, if you switch this on, basically it will allow you to do lots of other cool stuff. You can see analytics on the posts that you make. You can also go live on LinkedIn, so you can do a live stream if you're brave enough, and you can be really interactive with your profile. But the most useful part of this creator mode is that you can tick your 5 profile topics. So if you click on, Bruce, for me once more, and just once more, you see on my profile where it says talks about leadership, mental health, higher education, interim management, and diversity inclusion. You can add your own hashtags here by turning on the creator mode, and you can only pick 5, so you have to be a bit choosy, but these hashtags are basically keywords, so it'll enable your profile to be visible by anybody else that's interested in those areas. So for me, interim management is really important. I want to appear and I want to see stuff that's coming in within that subject matter. I'm also really interested in mental health and diversity inclusion. So think about what you're interested in, click on creator mode, and you can add in your top 5 hashtags. Right, next slide, please. Just a quick point on featured. So this is where you can pin your posts. So if you have some really great articles, if you have some really interesting posts that you want your visitors to see, you can go to this section where the pink arrow is, press add, and then pin your posts. And it basically just shows how brilliant you are. Right, next slide. Ooh, so here is your about section. So you've got about 2,000 characters here to play with, so a bit more of a longer space to write your value proposition. So this is similar to your profile on your CV, but potentially a bit longer. So this is your opportunity to articulate your value proposition, so telling the world what you actually do. So my view is it should be quite a concise statement that really tells the client why you're here, why they should speak to you. And you've also got your outcomes or your track record or your key achievements, so that you're giving people some social proof of what you do. And it should be persuasive and really end in a call to action. So at the bottom of mine, you can't quite see it, I don't think, but I've got you know, my contact details, and you know, feel free to drop me a line if you want to chat about the interim market. If you click the next slide for me, Bruce, the other cool thing you can do here as well is add in your top skills. Oh, actually, it's not on this PowerPoint one actually, but just in that section, if you go into it, you can click in your top skills, and those will appear on the bottom of your profile with some little stars, which is quite cool. If you go onto my profile after this webinar, you'll see that, and I can help you where it is. So lastly, then, this is your experience, and this is your CV. So this is where all of your assignments may be. So again, you could follow a similar format to your CV. I do think profiles and CVs should really align nicely. So just be sure to be quite concise. here. One of the key points actually in here is if you're not in a job. So if you're not in a job and you don't have a current position, it is worth adding one in, and hopefully this will make sense. But basically, the LinkedIn algorithm uses your current position. So when recruiters are searching on LinkedIn, that information is something that the platform uses to push your profile in front of me, so in my search criteria. So if you're in between assignments, you should add a position and say that you're looking for work, so transformation director, and in the spot that's usually reserved for the company name, you could make it clear that you're available for work. So put seeking new position or something like that.
So Claire, just on that, I mean, many of us will work through our own limited company. So I guess that's where you kind of could have that, because you're still operating as, you know, XYZ Limited. You're just not doing it for anybody at this point in time. So is that an option?
Absolutely. So you could have Claire Carter Limited, transformation director, and then, you know, the dates that you started that company to present, and then you could say currently available for whatever it might be. And then in that space, you could list out the projects that you've recently worked on. So,
exactly. Now, just while I'm kind of coming in here, so Mark has asked, can you show us how to turn on create mode in LinkedIn? So I've just gone to my LinkedIn profile on my phone, because obviously we can't do it here faffing about with screen sharing live LinkedIn profiles, although that might be the subject for another webinar. We actually have an interactive session when we do that. But Mark, if I scroll down, it tells me currently in resources that creator mode is off. I click on it and then I can turn it on. But Claire, do you want to elaborate on that response? How do you turn create mode on in LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got my phone here as well. So I'm just having a look. So basically, you need to find the section on the phone that's on your profile that says resources. And in there, you'll have things like my network, personal demographic information, activity, and there should be something that says creator mode.
Yeah.
That's really, really small. And then click on that and turn it on.
Exactly. And in that as well, I've got 5 resources that are available to me: my items, activity, personal demographics, etc. So again, there's probably a follow-up technical section where we maybe go and create one of these things using all these resources, and we optimize it. So let's park that as a maybe a follow-up thing. But that's really interesting. Right, okay, we digress. Back to value proposition, Claire.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. There's so much to talk about with LinkedIn, and maybe an interactive webinar where I'm on LinkedIn might be helpful for the future. So yeah,
exactly. And they're changing it all the time, obviously, because they have to keep it fresh.
They do. Yeah, they do. So the last point to make in the about section is I would add in key skills. So there is a button to press. So when you press this little pencil at the top, that is your edit button. When you go into there, you will be able to choose your top skills. And you will be able to say, so I have interim management, I have creative resourcing and things like that. So whatever it is that you do, you can have those skills there. And so that's about it. And the only thing I was going to say when you're updating your profile is just to make sure that when you add something new on, that you also review the previous role as well, and just make sure it's written in the past tense. Because sometimes when you're writing your current role and then you finish that and then you put the next role on, you might forget just to alter the language and the tense. So just remember to do that. Okay, have we got time to talk about the algorithm, Bruce? That's next.
Well, we've got 5 minutes, so we've got a couple of questions. So let's just see if we can knock the questions off. Is the
Okay.
profile applicable? So Mark, again, talking about profile. Is profile applicable to CV, LinkedIn, or both?
Yeah, so you'll see your profile is relevant for your CV and your LinkedIn profile. The LinkedIn profile part gives you more space to write. I think your profile on your CV needs to be quite short and snappy.
Yeah. Charles is saying questions on CV and case studies. Preliminary data from the IIM survey shows the majority do not ever use. Thoughts from Claire on case studies.
So who doesn't use them? As in,
I guess it's
clients?
interim. Yeah, candidates. I'm guessing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that I think they're a helpful way to demonstrate what you did. So, you know, a case study is quite a generic term, and when I talk about case studies, I mean a very simple description of what you did in that job. And I would use that for clients because I would use it to demonstrate the social proof that this person has delivered in that particular problem or challenge before. So yeah, I do think they're relevant. Maybe case studies can also be viewed as quite big documents, and maybe that is probably not so relevant.
Yeah. Okay, and then we've got William is asking, or I think it's a statement here. Many of my interim colleagues do have listed all their assignments in the experience field. I just have one role instead, starting interim manager consultant. My assignments can be found at my web page. For me, it looks a bit messy to see 30 roles from the last 10 years of time in the list. Which approach do you prefer as an HR guy?
I think that's a really good question. I think that if you have a website and you've got all of your detail on there, make sure that website is on your LinkedIn profile and on your CV. And in your most recent position, I would just list out maybe the most recent 1, 2, or 3 roles. What you've done in the last 5 years. Anything older than that probably is a little bit too old.
I have to say, personally, I've used my LinkedIn profile as an aid memoir to remember what I did. Yeah. So look, we've a few minutes left, Claire. How do you want to just round this off?
So I think if you click to the next slide, I think that we probably don't have time to talk about the algorithm. So, and the next slide, we've talked about that one. So this is a really interesting subject, and I could spend quite a long time talking about it because it takes a while to understand what you need to, how you need to basically run it. So I think we'll probably do that another time, or if anyone wants to talk to me about it, they can give me a quick buzz. I don't mind. So I think we just go to the summary then, Bruce, really. So I hope that's been helpful. And just in summary, there's just a few things under each LinkedIn and CV that I think is important. And I think it's also important to say that what I've talked about isn't necessarily gospel, it's just my thoughts. You know, please still add in your personality and style to your CV and your LinkedIn profile. One size doesn't fit all, but hopefully what I've gone through gives you a bit of a guide as to what looks good in the eyes of a recruiter.
Cool. Well, look, I mean, just to top and tail that from our point of view, I know that a number of the IIM board are on this call, and I think on my behalf and theirs, and for all the other attendees, I'd like to thank you, Claire, for giving up your time to do this. A fascinating session, and as you say, one that we could probably dive into a number of facets of, and we probably will for future topics. So really great introduction to what the art of the possible is, and I can see you getting a lot of emails on people saying, you know, certainly from me, going, have a look at this CV, what do you think? Because, you know, we do have these moments where we're thinking, you know, is this CV or is this LinkedIn profile actually representing us well? And you need somebody in your corner giving you that feedback and advice. And that ties in with some other sessions we were running with John Nyland about creating your personal brand and how you want to be perceived at work and the footprint you leave. So this is all kind of part of that whole gestalt, if you like, of the impression we're building in the marketplace. So thank you again. Thanks everybody. Just the stuff's been recorded. Go to the IIM website and you'll be able to pick it up with the slides as well. Those of you that are members, thanks for your support in joining the Institute, and I hope that you found this helpful, because obviously this is a benefit of membership. For those that aren't members, I don't know how many non-members are on the call, but you are very welcome to come and join us in the profession, in the Institute. Get onto the website and see how you can apply to become a member. So with that, sorry, we've slightly run over, but on that note, I'd like to wish everybody a great rest of week. Enjoy the coronation at the weekend. And again, thanks to you, Claire, and we'll see you all again very soon, I hope.
See you soon.
On that note, sorry?
See you soon.
See you soon. Bye now.